You're live. What they said.
Good morning.
So you found us.
What is it trying to tell us?
No strings, no catch. You own everything.
Now stay tuned to Rock Flux.
Hey. Ouch. That had to hurt your ears. Tony Carabin here for another morning show. Barely awake and looking like it. A couple of gulps of caffeine on the microphone and
good morning.
Playing the old liners. If you hadn't heard what happened on our grand live over 6 hour broadcast, live TV broadcast on Friday. Well, it was glorious, as I said in the morning after brief little thing that's still up there, the one where you just see like kind of a glowing head in the middle. But yeah, they blocked it because of copyright. Because at the very end, like after 6 hours, I decided to, it was just ending and I was playing a couple of just rock songs because I have this get up here on the right-hand side, that I can just at any time I want to, just do this.
Here's what's happening.
And what's happening is I ended up taking the video down. Now I downloaded it and it took, like over 2 hours to download the damn thing. It was like 6 gigabytes. But at least I had that ability to do it. And for some reason, I don't know if you know what premium is, but premium allows you to not have commercials when you're watching YouTube. And then suddenly, I don't know if it's related or unrelated to that, but all of a sudden, even though it still says premium on my YouTube channel, I've been getting commercials. I left TV because of commercials. If there's commercials on YouTube, I guess I'll stop watching commercials. Or stop watching YouTube. I'm still half asleep. Anyway, I don't know if you noticed the title card for this thing. I wish I could show it to you again. Actually, I could print it out. I've been thinking about doing some of this stuff. I'm going to print this out. This is it's old fashioned, It's just because these technocrats who run these organizations, like, this scale to fit. Yeah, let's make that bigger. They're not as sophisticated as they think they are. Yeah. It's like even with YouTube Live, like I'm going to talk about some of that. The other thing I'm looking for is my morning show logo, which rhymes for some reason. Show content. Anyway, my name's Tony Carabin, if I haven't already said that. I have a channel called rockflux.com, but I also will be adding in the show more thing a link to I'm going to make sure I pick the right one here. That's the biggest possible morning show. A PSD file will open, even if you don't have Photoshop. It will open in Premiere, and print and all that stuff. It's just that you don't have the benefit of getting layers. And that's the whole benefit. Even though I purchased Photoshop. I'm going to go grab those off the printer. I'll be back in a flash. A matter of seconds, actually. Kitty. I actually have to wear headphones Well, this thing makes me look like I'm a giant person. Vanity. Night and day you torture me. You're watching The Morning Show. Now, there should be a button on the side of this thing that says inset photo or picture in picture. And it should just, give you, a pop-up window where you can just select and it should be there. Or drag and drop. There's no reason why they shouldn't have something like that. Anyway, this is Tony Caribbean Live. So you're going to get Tony Caribbean Live. Let me just do something here quick. And it's funny, I started doing this thing. And before I even thought about doing this thing, I ditched the domain name Tony Caribbean Live. But so I'm going to do some arts and crafts online. And I'm also going to go new window, GoDaddy. See if this one has my accounts. I'm not sure if it does. No, I think this one was used for something else. I have to open up another second. I wonder if I could open up a second browser, if that's going to cause a problem.
Good morning.
Well, anyway, as you know, if you haven't gathered by now, if you're new, and it's not unlikely that you are a new visitor because okay, let's just do this. All right. They have some new thing now it looks like on GoDaddy. $1.09 a month for the first year. Includes so I'm not sure I understand. I'm going to add this to a cart and continue to cart. I really don't care about full domain privacy. And I don't, this idea, let's see. Create an email. I don't need any of that. Don't need website builder. Checkout. Password. Sign in. Save and continue. Taxes and fees. Complete purchase. And thank you for your order. See what's included. I don't want that. Okay, so I now own Tony Caribbean Live again, which the funny thing is I own the damn thing back in the 90s. So go back to
Good morning.
So speaking of vanity, night and day you torture me, I am going to, I guess temporarily I could do this with tape. So I don't have to run into the other rooms. Hold on. I almost ran off with the... Is this double-sided tape? Yeah. I'm still here. Patience. Patience, my friends. Like I say to Kitty often, patience. I'm truly a character. That's the beauty of it all. So, let's see if we can do this. There's the cat. The morning show. I mean, it's a little amateurish. I got to move it up a little bit, maybe boost it out. This here, which we'll cut so it'll be a little bit easier. Normally I use an X-Acto blade. I don't know why I'm huffing and puffing today. Because I walked in the past couple of weeks, as anyone who's been watching me, I walked over a mile plus every day. I have stairs in my building. Hopefully I didn't get the plague. I don't believe in the plague, by the way. Okay. Let's fill the screen with that. This was my title card. And again, I should be able to just push a button and YouTube should just allow me to have this inset or split screen, picture in picture, whatever. The kind of stuff I do on my normal videos when I have regular production. This was from when I used to do Twitter. I used to do different types of things. This would classify as a meme. And the idea is that I had like a series, people got into these reasons for things. And, good morning, Trey, by the way. And I had like 10 reasons how you could survive dystopia. And this is 10 reasons. I think that the title of the show is something along that line. 10 reasons to make life worth living. And of course, from my perspective, women, nature, Trey, who's on right now, or was earlier, takes nature pictures. He could appreciate that. Good food, which I grow in my garden, and music, of course, whether you're like me and you play music, but I also am a great fan and listen to music. Flowers, which kind of ties into nature, but that includes trees and forests and all of that stuff, mushrooms, whatever. The whole idea of this our fellow inhabitants on this planet. Art and philosophy. Kind of a goofy thing down the bottom. I'll enlarge that. Just having fun. Some goofy picture of people from back in the 30s or something. And of course, those who have pets and animals. And then for anyone who tuned in Friday, beer. And that's the thing, so when you're confronted with all this craziness, madness, and I'm gonna dig out the I'm just gonna print this while I talk. All the madness that people are talking about, because it's pretty clear what's happening right now in Western civilization, and from our perspective, the United States, that things are getting worse by the day. I mean, literally by the day. And that causes a lot of people, to be, find themselves in a state of panic. I have to grab that thing off the printer. I'm going to have to like restructure this room, but that's another story. Hang on. It's show and tell day on Tony Caravan Live, Rock Flux.
Good morning.
So, to make a long story longer, as I always say, I'm cutting with the scissors here. See, whenever you're doing something, this is a little, whether you're on radio or whenever you do something on camera, the key is that you have to show people what you're doing. So in their mind's eye, they can, grasp it. They've done studies on this, psychological, people do study psychology and human behavior, animal behavior, all that kind of stuff. And that, I don't know, I forget what the percentage is. I don't know if it's evenly split down the middle or not. But whatever, it's almost, I think it was almost split down the middle, maybe. It's maybe. I don't know. But there are this percentage, and it's a high percentage of people out there who simply can't visualize something. In other words, if they don't see it, excuse me, this still smells like smoke from Friday cigar smoking. Maybe that's why I'm huffing and puffing. Though, I don't know. I'm back at it. Back in the saddle again. I can't play that tune, otherwise they'll like block my thing. So that's another thing. And I'll circle back. Excuse me. So I got a copyright right after 6 hours of broadcasting live. That's me like trying to straighten this thing out. Let's just go through this first because I don't want to overwhelm you. Anybody. And what this says is I have to look here myself. I could see 10 ways to enjoy dystopia, aka the zombie apocalypse. All right. 10 ways to enjoy dystopia, aka the zombie apocalypse. And of course, I'll pull this back so I can see. That's what I say, such primitive. It's the year 2021 and all this alleged technology, and it's like it's a soupy sales show here. So we'll just have to go with like bit by bit. It's like impossible for me to get the microphone and to see because of the way they got the camera placed. Okay, so let's assume that the first row is visible. There we go. Somehow. Okay. The first one is laugh at their megalomania. And of course, that's like a scene from, that classic movie, How I Learned to, Dr. Strangelove. The second is grow things, garden, grow your own food. The third and fourth things are basically learn to cook and eat healthy. And then you grow brew your own beer, which I've got all the ingredients and everything ready to do that, and I just haven't gotten around to. And then 6 is chill the fuck out. All right. So what? It's the end of the world, or the end of Western civilization. And if you remember this old ad, listen to good music, appreciate nature. That's a picture I took of a bee in my backyard. Those overgrown flowers. There's like a rather, that's a picture of my front house. It kind of looks like something in, Appalachia. Of course, technically, I guess I am this is considered northern Appalachia. And then the other one is pursue happiness. Because everyone else is like some kind of NPC. So this is why life is worth living. Okay. And then you take the other viewpoint and say, you kind of just laugh at them. Enjoy the zombie apocalypse. And that's the theme. That's today's theme. There's plenty of reasons that make life worth living, despite everything else. And the lighting in here is horrible, and I'm such a vain person. I shouldn't be. It's light outside. At some point, I'm going to have to feed the birds. 7:00 here on the eastern part of the U.S., the mid-Atlantic states. Down south, I think, I'd mentioned it's still like 8. Oh, wow. I was wondering why it was cold. I'm wearing this flannel shirt because it came down. It was really cold. It's 3 degrees outside right now. And it looks like the high today is going to be lucky if it just stays in the teens. Though if I can believe this thing properly, it's saying it might get up to 50 degrees on Wednesday. I don't know if I can believe that or not. But Wednesday is... Well, Wednesday's the 24th, but March is coming. But despite all of this, this, I had to laugh, Anyway, what I was trying to say is they finally decided to do something to help Texas out, like a week into it. All these people starving. They never sent FEMA down or any of that stuff during the heart of it. And then somebody in the media must have dropped something, on a Sunday show or something like that. And suddenly they did it. I'd love to say they listened to me because I was having a conversation with Tattoo on Friday, which is posted up on YouTube. You can check it out. And you'll hear me say to him, and this is Friday, and they didn't act until like yesterday or something. But I was saying, hey, hey, man, why isn't FEMA down there handing out bottles of water? Because they had like, 1 million some people, there were boil advisories because everything, nothing works when these T-bone Pickens, these ridiculous windmills that are, we're just, a windmill is the least green energy device ever conceived or created. And there's nobody that can argue with that. No one. You cannot make any kind of argument whatsoever. No defense. There's no defense for how that they were purely, and they knew from the very start, the complete opposite of anything to do with green, caring about the environment, or producing electricity, without using fossil fuels. I mean, number one, these things are huge. They're not plastic. They're constructed of metal, the bases and all of that stuff, right? Which requires furnaces, all right, fossil fuel furnaces to forge, to melt the metallic structure of these things, okay, using tremendous amounts of fossil fuels. Then they have to level forest lands, cut down trees, beautiful areas of nature, right? These things, if anyone has driven through highways and areas, and you see these windmills, and it's the most grotesque, ugliest thing in the world, total destruction of what once used to be. I can remember I was driving up to see someone. This is several years ago, and I hadn't been on that highway in literally in a long time, maybe 10 years or more. And I'm sitting there in the passenger side, and I'm looking, and suddenly I see ahead all these things standing up, and I'm like, what the wind? Oh, there must be windmills. And as we got closer and closer, I realized it was just endless windmills. And what used to be this really nice nature ride, drive up to this place, they had chopped down all the trees, what used to be either trees or pasture lands or rolling hills, valleys, whatever, all leveled and replaced with these white, ugly fans, right? I mean, call them a windmill. Giant fans, whatever, fans the size of I don't know, 10-story buildings or something. So they, first of all, have to use a tremendous amount of fuel, to forge these metals in these furnaces, right? Then they have to use this heavy equipment, which I've talked about many times on this show, that require, fuels, things like, diesel, and, it's not like biofuels are running heavy equipment and then, and stuff like that for bulldozers and stuff. I mean, if it is, that's the other absurdity of that. You'd have to, excuse me. You'd have to grow literally fields and fields of food meant for humanity to create that volume of biofuel. They talk about, I saw this thing about biomass furnaces, and the guy was saying it's like burning so many trees per hour, or even less than that, minutes or something. And they call it biomass because it's, a combination of, wood, sawdust, or whatever, or plant, whatever. But these fuels they make from corn and other things, they grow, they say, oh, we have a population problem, we can't feed the world. Well, maybe you would be able to feed the world if you weren't burning burning plants and using fields to grow things, and somehow pretending that it's saving the environment. you're basically making fake diesel from corn and and things, other things. So you're depriving humanity of a food source, and then you're burning this stuff up. So anyway, so this heavy equipment that has to be fueled one way or the other, it's not good. They destroyed the environment for the place to put this using, they made them with furnaces fueled with carbon-based fuels. The heavy equipment is using carbon-based fuels. They're pretty much so. They're not bio. You can't. We're talking heavy equipment. All right. Then they have to use these cranes, and those things are run on carbon-based fuels. To raise these things up. It's like I say in the cities, fire trucks with, the so-called hook and ladder. Get those ladders up and pump that water up to like the 22nd floor to put out a fire in some kind of skyscraper. Those things don't run on electric. All right. Never will. Never, ever will. Ever. All right. And then, okay, so then they have, now they kill birds. So now suddenly they destroyed this beautiful landscape, chopped down all these trees, used all this, these various carbon things that they're supposedly against to put up this green windmill fan thing in the middle of, what was once a beautiful rolling hill or valley or something. And now the thing's up there. All right. They finally get it up with the crane and all that sort of thing. And so now the thing starts to spin, and birds that normally fly through these areas, and if you look below these things, they're just killing fields of birds, thousands and thousands of bird carcasses. And I'm sorry to say that early in the morning, but that's what happens. The birds don't know. This is unnatural. They're not expecting this kind of thing, right? And then if you get under closer inspection, this is one that no one even talks about. Under closer inspection, if you have a telephoto lens, okay, and you look closely on the blades, you'll see that they are coated with bugs. Like bugs get on your windshield of a car. They're literally coated with bugs, which reduces their aerodynamics. All right, because you've got bugs on there, layers and layers of them. And it's not necessarily uniform. So this blade might be just off kilter a little bit. And that all matters. That matters in aerodynamics and propellers and things like that. Okay, so that's that. So now you destroyed a valley, a mountainside, rolling hills, pastures. You've killed thousands upon thousands of birds. This is just in one area. These are all over the world, the country and the world. You've got these, they're no longer aerodynamic, operating at optimum capacity. You've spent tremendous amount of fuels in the manufacture of these things, the raising of them, the leveling of the fields. And they were subsidized by government taxpayer money that went to these utility companies and these Wall Street firms that literally traded in them as a commodity. No one has ownership, wants to claim ownership to them anymore because they don't last that long. They catch fire, all right? They have maintenance problems. Remember, this is a generator, a reverse, this is a reverse engine. So imagine an airplane, a propeller airplane. This is the complete opposite. So rather than it propelling a plane through the air is turning the propeller. And so that what would be the engine is a generator, and that's, supposedly, supplying energy back into the grid. So all these things go out. They were subsidized by the government. All right. Tax incentives for the companies that made them. outright $1 million grants on each unit, so to speak, traded on Wall Street, but people trade everything. And now the electric bill's gone up after all of that. And they're starting to, they don't, they're not forever things. So, they've been doing these things for a couple decades. There are fields of these now that are just standing there rotting. Because what happened was that once like the companies that built these things that got $1 million in cash, $1 million in tax incentives, right, which is like another $1 million in cash. It's money they would have had to pay Uncle Sam, savings, and the ways they cook their books. The big corporations like that, the corporatocracy people that pull the strings types, they got that all figured out. How to cook the books, and take advantage of anything the government, does, because they write the bills. So they wrote the law, so to speak, the bill that went through Congress that gave them the tax incentives and how it works and the grant money and all that kind of stuff. So now they're just sitting up there collecting moss. And they were traded on Wall Street as a commodity. So it's like I said this before, they trade mortgages on houses and stuff like that. Nobody knows who owns the original, that the paper has been passed around so many times. Nobody even knows, where it is. Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, who knows? Bank of Japan. It's just who knows, right? And so now you've got these things like obelisks in in Egypt or something, just sitting there. No one's ever going to fix them. Nobody wants to spend the money. And in order to repair them, or what was that? Kerry, the guy with the ultimate facelift, right? And Botox, whatever. The guy looks bizarre. Well, these will be new jobs, there'll be technicians, solar panel technicians and windmill technicians for guys who used to work on pipelines. So guys that use wrenches, welders, heavy equipment, digging pipelines with all these skills, lifelong skills, right? Men with talent and skill. They're going to what? Some become people to clean off mirrors in some solar farm. Have you seen those things? His mirrors just smashed. Or now what's happened here in Texas, the windmills have frozen over. But it's happened in Germany and other parts of Europe. It's happening all over the place. I mean, remember, it's cold right now. I'm looking, I left it up. North of me, it's 1 degree right now. It's 7:16 in the morning. And it's 1 degree Fahrenheit. Okay. People in the US, when it's like 1 or 0 in Celsius, that's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. Freezing. When it's 1 degree in Fahrenheit, okay, that's basically 31 degrees below 0, for us, or below freezing. It's not just below 0, below freezing. So, for all practical purposes, if it's 1 degree now, and like I say, it's light out there now, that means overnight, it was below 0 Fahrenheit. And you get, so I forget what the number is, but when you get so many degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, it actually, there's a point where it's this exact same number is Celsius. I think it might be in the 20s or something like that. So actually, the temperatures just line up. It's the same. It's so cold that it's like the same in Celsius and Fahrenheit. But be that as it may, so you don't think that that they've been freezing up here, the windmills, and all along, that corridor where that T-Bone Pickens guy, oil guy, somehow did this, and Texas, almost 25% of their energy came from these things. And, and after this disaster, it's like anything else. They're not going to be the same, If you've got something that's frozen up, that causes stress on the equipment, and depending on how it's brought back into operation, warmed up or whatever. It's like, everyone's probably by now seen that picture of a helicopter, obviously running on carbon-based, petrochemical fuels, de-icing windmills. I don't know if that was they were doing that in Europe or if that was something done here in the States. I forget where the picture was from, but it floated around. It made it, and they were doing it. And I'm sure it wasn't an isolated instance. And when you're talking 25% of your power coming from a thing, that's a substantial amount of power. It's one thing, 5%, 10%. 25, 20, well, it's actually technically I think it's 23% in Texas was Texas 23%. So, but almost a quarter of your power coming from a thing that is like rendered useless. And people saying, we haven't seen snow like this in 30 years or something like that. And yet the climate change people are still out there trying to say that, if we don't do something in 9 years, the planet will be heated, It's like, look, man, don't you understand? It did snow in Texas 30 years, and some of these southern places 30 years ago or 40 years ago, or sometimes, they say the storm of the century, right? Or we haven't seen this in 50 years or 25 years. Well, the problem is when you've got a bunch of news people that are 25 years old or 35 years old, means they have no recollection whatsoever that these are cyclical events and that this stuff happens. They simply don't understand. There is no global warming. They were talking about Time magazine was talking about the world freezing over. It was a cover story in the late 70s. They had Archie Bunker on the front cover, a cartoon version of him. I put it in an earlier video showing him like all bundled up on his Archie Bunker chair and said it was Time magazine. That's a real cover. Go research it. Like I say, too bad YouTube is so primitive. Google's so primitive, And just to get back we'll keep circle on this. I might as well get into a good old rant here. Why would they copyright strike you for playing like Jamie's Crying by Aerosmith? Just taken as an example, or any song. Does that mean that Google or YouTube isn't paying royalties? Now, I'm a musician, and so every time I have a song, I register it with BMI. For people who are unfamiliar with the way the structure of music publishing goes, people have music publishers, and then those publishers, they go through like BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, right? These organizations that basically, kind of manage that whole thing, the royalties, so that when music is played on the radio, in movies, and here, or should be, that people like me, the songwriter, or the publishing company, that we're supposed to get a royalty for it. Now, granted, the royalty isn't usually much, and stuff, but it, it could be in the penny sometimes. But the idea is that this is a thing. Back in the 90s, when I was doing a live broadcast, That's why I say I've been doing for 25 years ago. At 25 years ago, I used to do a music show, a lounge show. Do you remember? If you're old enough, you remember when lounge, you know, what lounge music is. You know, I'd like to play. I I have 10,000 songs right here at the push of a button. You know, the same way I do this.
Good morning.
I could just give you an example of that. But you know, see if I have an intro of one of my shows. I can't use that. Let's see.
1, 2.
I can't use that too. I think if it's less than 6 seconds, they don't bust you. But that I just might have gotten busted for just even doing that. Okay, this one. Yeah, let's see that. That might be a decent example here. Whoops.
Hey.
That's like the beginning of one of my shows. And so what I'm saying is that that kind of lounge. So, you know, everything from big band to you know, crooners, Sinatra, Dean Martin. I saw this thing yesterday. It was like kind of pretty sad. This is a real weird circular thing. Somebody had found Dean Martin's house in like Palm Springs, totally abandoned and just gone to you know, and walked around it, went to the backyard where the pool was and the whole thing. It's just empty, abandoned, and just falling apart. Dean Martin, girl Dino's house. But the point was, I was doing this show, and it was actually, back then, it was popular because there weren't that many people who had the technology or figured this stuff out, and that were actually webcasting, they called it. I mean, literally at the beginning, there was only a handful of us. And then there was a couple of handfuls of us. And I was written up at the time in a lot of publications about it. The longest running lounge show on the internet, you know, stuff like that. You know, be in magazines, towards the back of the magazines, things you should check out. Tony Caravan Live. But I paid BMI $500 a year in order to be able to play that music, you know, on the internet. Now, radio stations pay way more than that, but it was new, and they had a kind of a thing there that if you paid BMI, ASCAP wasn't hassling you. If you paid ASCAP, BMI wasn't going to hassle you. But out of that BMI money, you know, that pool of money from webcasters, that tied into paying royalties to the artists. And I guess with someone like me, you know, I was playing stuff that wasn't getting played anyway. So, you know, people weren't listening to Dean Martin 1995, you know. But I did it, you know, I did the right thing, you know. So I wrote that check out for $500 every year to BMI. And I kept track of the songs I played. And once a week or whatever, I would send them the song list. And so they knew what was being played. You know, I was even doing their work for them. What was being played, and so that way they could divvy up out of that pool of money, or however they do it. I don't know how their inner workings work. But that they would be able to send their music publishing people, you know, whatever. A few bucks here, a few bucks there, whatever. I don't know how it works. So let's flash forward 25 years later. I'm on YouTube Live, okay? The internet. I'm webcasting. So what? You could see my ugly mug, right? But it's the same thing. Here's a microphone, right? And here's, you know,
presenting the world's greatest everything.
And here's a, you know, playing with access to, you know, to be able to play music and sound clips and all that kind of stuff. I even get copyright hits on my own songs, which is really laughable. Because I wrote 50 songs and they're all legitimately, you know, registered with BMI. So this must mean, why would Google or why would YouTube block my video and give me a copyright strike for playing some Aerosmith song or something? Or, you know, I mean, why? I mean, is that it could there, you know, Occam's razor, let's get back to that. That means that And so, if some random investigative reporter happens to happen upon this, this webcast in the future, do some investigation on that, or BMI. I mean, maybe I ought to report them. I think I ought to report them to BMI and like see what the story is, or what kind of deal did they make. And maybe we, the membership, we should pressure the company to do something about this. In other words, YouTube should be paying royalties, which means I should be able to sit here and just have a music show, DJ music show. I did it 25 years ago, and like I say, it was on the up and up. I paid into the to BMI money, kept track of my song lists. Just like I remember I managed a radio station. So I know I did the same thing I ended up doing, when I was managing a radio station. Totally on the up and up, the right way, the way the artists are supposed to get royalties. I mean, that's what it's all about. That's why they have these ridiculous concerts, and concerts are so expensive now. Because like the record companies, they let, all these people, the real money comes from publishing. That's how it works. Royalties. You sell 1 million records. Well, the record company steals practically all that money. They give a band an advance, some band coming out of like, nowhere, and they give them like $25,000 advance. It's 4 or 5 guys in the band. It's like, oh, I got $5,000. Wow. Great. I'm going to get a new guitar, get my girlfriend an engagement ring. We're going to be pop stars, rock stars, country stars. And then they bring the band into the studio, their studio, by the way, their engineers being paid by them primarily. And then they, and the bill on that might be, who knows, 40 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand. It depends, on the studio and, what they're recording. So, and then there's, the album, the album graphics, distribution, all this promotion, PR work. We're going to assign a publicist to you. So now the band, if they're lucky, they sell 1 million albums, right? Like 500,000 albums. If you get gold record, I think it's only like 500,000. It's not 1 million. Platinum, I think, might be 1 billion. I forget the numbers. Doesn't matter. Whatever they sell, how many hundreds of thousands? Now, you would think an album selling, whether it's digital, or CD, or in the old days, a record. They're doing vinyl again now. Vinyl, or even, the old cassette days. But somebody's paying let's just round it out, say approximately $10. Well, if it was $1 and you sold 1 million, it would be $1 million. If it's $10, it would obviously be 10 million. Cut it in half, it's 5 million. So let's say a band has a gold record, they sold 500,000 albums. All right. That means the record company got $5 million, right? And somehow the band goes like, hey, where's all our money? Well, it cost us $150,000. You got your advance, all your expenses paid, the cost of the studio, the cost of pressing the record, distribution, the publicist we assigned to you, our management company, and to organize those initial tours, publicity tours, cost, a couple $100,000. Actually, you have a gold record. Here's a copy of the gold record you can have. And the band, you guys owe us $42,300 $8.72, right? And the guys in the band are going like, what? You know, I thought I was going to get $1 million, right? That's how the record business works, right? It's like everything else. Corporatocracy. Wake up, people. It's all fixed. It's like these politicians down here. President of the United States isn't the leader of the free world. He's the lowest person. Speaker of the House is nobody. Senators are nobody. They're all way down here. Above them are the bureaucrats, right? Technocrats, bureaucrats. And then it's the corporate, CEOs and all those people. But at the top, it's the corporatocracy, the consortium of everything, the consortium of all the high finance, all the corporations, all the boards of directors. Half the people sit on multiple boards of directors, right? Unelected, people, more Europeans than American, by the way, that rule the world. And then companies like China, have bought in so heavily into the entertainment, like film business and stuff like that, that money's not even, these bands don't even realize, or these movie stars don't even realize that money, it's funding gulags in China, communist Chinese, quelling democracy demonstrations in Hong Kong. Yeah. Organ, basically cutting people open and trading organs and stuff like that. And they found there's all the wigs that they were sending over. It's women buying these wigs, and the wigs were actually hair shaved off of these Uyghurs in these concentration camps in China. Yeah, it's a real hair wig. Too bad the person where that head of hair came from didn't appreciate having their head shaved bald. So you could buy that wig, whatever, some wig shop or Walmart. So my question to Google and YouTube is, how could there possibly be a copyright strike? And why would you block a video because of it? That means you're not paying. See, because the benefit to the musician, the person that wrote the song, say, even more so than the musician, a studio musician at least usually gets paid for, to go in for a session. But the writer of the song, the writers of the song, and the music publishing company, however that was put together, well, they want that song played because they want the royalties. Because that's how you make your money. Because I just explained to you, you don't make it by selling records. That's why these bands go on tour and they're selling all this merch. But the record companies got their hands in that too. So, the bands don't, that's in the contract. Record company gets 60% of t-shirt money, whatever. It's crazy business. But so that's why it costs $100 to go to some concerts. And believe me, and so the band, that's how the bands make their money. Is by going on tour. And the smaller bands that, end up playing smaller venues and things like that. Yeah, it's a struggle. Those guys aren't, there's bands you think, oh, they got this song and everybody knows it. And you're thinking, oh man, they must be living the life. It's like, not really, man. They're just they might have enough money to buy a new car and they might have a house, but they're not living in some mansion. It's not like this bling bling rappers, there's exceptions, the higher echelon, of the ones that just break so big that they actually, don't get a gold record or a platinum record, but they get like 4 platinum records in a row. And they're getting played on so many radio stations that the royalties are rolling in, that the record company, it's like, here, record company, take your frickin' $1 million, but we've got 20 million left over. Those people like, the Gagas and stuff like that, they get to that point. But I mean, that's the exception, not the rule. That's not how the business works. So for the average band, average songwriter, I would want you to play my music on YouTube. Because then I get two things from that. One, I should get at least, some meager amount of royalty, even if it is just in cents, but it's also exposure. So people go, hey, I never heard that song. That sounds pretty cool. Or even if I played, like I said, if I play an old Aerosmith song or something weird like that, somebody go, Jamie's crying. Like me just even saying that, there might be somebody listening to this when this is the second time around. It's live now. There's nobody watches these things live. Who's up at 7:30 in the morning unless they're getting ready for work, taking a shower. Everybody else is in bed or I don't know, shoveling snow. But if somebody hears that, they'll go, oh, yeah, I remember that song. That was a pretty good song by them. And I thought it was a cool thing that I was going through my collection and I pulled a few things out like that, like Hypnotized by Fleetwood Mac, because I was getting into some woo-woo stuff on towards the end of the show. And I played that song, Hypnotized, if you remember that. And so I was pulling out some interesting stuff that I go, okay, this would be cool. And I'm sure, someone listening to that, if it wouldn't have been blocked, apart from the original core group of listeners, whatever it was, it was definitely less than a dozen people. I don't know. I think it might have been as high as 25 because I was looking at some analytics and it's like some people came in, came out, but I think there was about 9 or so people that stayed with it the whole, were like not the whole 6 hours. It was 6 hours long, man. It was over 6 hours long. 6 hours, I think, in 23 minutes. I had to take the thing down because they screwed me over. But yeah, but there were other people that would come in, I guess, and listen for 20 minutes, a half hour, an hour or so like that, whatever. So I'm sure someone listening to that would go, hey, because if it were me, I know I would go, I forgot about that song. And I might have put it on my mix, put it on my playlist. Next time I go walking with the headphones on with the, I might put that on or I might go elsewhere on YouTube to one of the YouTube Music now. They have that thing and I might listen to it, real loud, enjoy it. So that's like I say, the benefit of from the standpoint of someone who writes a song, creates a song, the band is twofold. One, they should be receiving royalties, and two, it's publicity of the track, whether it's new or old. And so if you're getting what's called a copyright strike, that makes no sense whatsoever. That means they are not paying people out. I don't want to beat that to death, but you get the idea. So there's something fishy going on there, Something fishy is going on. They're not paying BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, whatever. They're not paying royalties because otherwise you should be able to play anything you want to. You should be able to just be your own DJ. And you're not able to do that. So that means they're not paying it because there's no other explanation. Why would you block somebody for that? And maybe why they created this YouTube Music, maybe that was some negotiation with the music publishers or something to have like a separate channel or something like that. I don't know. I mean, some of my songs are on YouTube Music. I noticed that. So I don't know if at that point I'm getting paid royalties if somebody listens to that. Look up Tony Caravan, Rock Flux. There's some band that stole that name Rock Flux. I mean, I say stole. I mean, I guess maybe they didn't steal it, but it's kind of coincidental. I've been Rock Flux for 25, freaking years, and I noticed that comes up, but you want to make sure you see the picture, the black and white picture of my, the Smoking Man black and white, picture of my face that says Rock Flux. But I just on live bought the TonyCaravanLive.com thing. And I do have Tony Caravan YouTube channel. And I don't know, I'm going to try to see blend those better so I could, like, it makes more sense. And maybe I'll even add a Tony Caravan Live additional channel and see if there used to be a way where you could combine your channels so that I don't know if they even allow you to do that anymore. So many things have changed. But, this is already gotten to an hour, so I don't want to go too much longer. But, like I was doing on the weekend.
The now sound. Another hour of music power.
Of course, minus the music, unfortunately. Which goes back to this whole idea of music being one of the reasons. But, just look at that for a second. And that's fairly decent quality there, apart from the cuts on my finger, because it's so cold that your hands just crack, no matter how, even if you put aloe on them. But when they try to get you down and do all this kind of stuff to you,
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
and that's what this is all about as we do the show and tell. They're trying to scare the crap out of people. But just remember, there's some crazy things and people are going through some hellish times. And that's without a doubt, particularly down in the southern United States where these things only happen. And I'll follow this up full circle, where they only happen cyclically. It's like the sun. The climate is basically controlled by the sun and magnetic fields. Okay, that's science, that's physics, that's cosmology, that's astronomy. I mean, it's the reality of the way things are. It's not like it's the sun's out now. Let's see if the temperature's changed. It's gone up to 3 degrees with the sun out. And it looks like it's supposed to be sunny all day, but the temperatures aren't supposed to get above the 20s. And that's because of they call it a polar vortex. But really what it is it's the jet stream is dipping. And it does this. But it's an effect caused by these cyclical things that happen that are primarily based on the sun, because the sun is the source of everything. That's why people worship the sun in ancient times, so to speak. Apollo was the sun god. That's why we went to the moon, because that's going to be a separate story. We're going to get more into that on the problems that we're having in the future that aren't climate related necessarily, but more extinction event related. But it's all cyclical. And so if you live long enough, and like I was saying, if you're 25 years old, you're 35 years old, you have no idea. If there was 20 some years ago, there was some big nor'easter, right? Or there were some hurricanes did this, or Tornado Alley had like back-to-back tornadoes that wreaked havoc. Or 30 years ago, something happened. Or let alone 50 years ago. And that seems like a lot of time. But the problem is the people in charge right now, you either have two kinds. You got these like people with who have lost their mental capability whatsoever, who are at the top, right? Basically, borderline, either have dementia or close to it. And then all these young reporters, right? 30 somethings, 20 somethings. And they have no idea. And they hear this stuff, and you get this Greta and these other people saying these things, trying to fear monger. And they have no idea that nor'easters are a part of, something that's been happening in the U.S. forever, When I was a kid, we used to measure snow in feet. You know, there were always horrible hurricanes and tornadoes in the U.S. Had nothing to do and forest fires and the Dust Bowl in the 30s and floods, and all kinds of crazy Mississippi flooding periodically and destroying all this. Nobody was talking about climate change back then. In fact, the old people back then who were, could go back to remember 50 years prior to the 30s, or, would talk about, that was the storm of the century. How many times have you heard the storm of the century? And people actually use that as if it's something that promotes or supports their theory of climate change. It's like you just basically, the terminology itself totally disputes it because it happened 100 years ago. When people were using less, less CO2, and things like that. Something that's 0.004% of the atmosphere that plants thrive on. And the more the plants thrive, the better the harvest for food and the better the oxygen level is for us humans and animals to breathe in, is not a threat to the planet. It's something we want. The more the better, more or less, And people, like I said before, but it bears repeating because, I have such low viewership. People didn't Florida used to be swampland. All right. When I was younger and used to read magazines, the back of magazines, they were always selling land in Florida and it was cheap. It used to be a running joke. I just bought a swamp, I bought swampland in Florida until Walt Disney decided to buy up a major swath of swampland in Central Florida, North Central Florida, and create a city, Disney World and Orlando, and turn that into a megalopolis, basically, right? That's all that was swampland. But prior to that, there were constantly hurricanes, just like scouring that, little Florida thing dangling down at the end of the United States. Key West, Key Largo, watch that old movie. That was about a hurricane, an event that occurred during a hurricane. It was from the 40s. Tornado Alley, like I said before. Dorothy, The Wizard of Oz. Those books were written in the late 1800s. That movie was made in the early part of the 20th century. I don't know what it was. 1920, that's an old movie, Wizard of Oz. It's about a tornado in Kansas. The thing is, our population, people don't understand this. During the Civil War, people talk about reparations and stuff like that, and I'm not going to get into that because to me, that's surreal. I think the population was something around 30 or 40,000, all right, in the United States. Million, 30 to 40 million people, okay? Now, that's nothing, okay? We probably have that many illegal immigrants in the United States right now. In the early part of the 20th century, like the 1920s or something like that, and I'm painting broad strokes, so I don't need anybody criticizing me. Well, it was actually 1928 or something. The early part, like the 1920-ish, that era, E-R-E-A, era. There was 100 million people in the United States, and that was after all the Irish, Italians, Polish, the working immigrants came into the United States. Not people coming in here for a free ride. I'm talking about the people that were building skyscrapers, highways with picks and shovels in their hands, and you've seen enough about that, and coal miners and, building the railroads and all that kind of stuff. All right. That level of immigrants, you don't see that today. Today you have, in the past you had some immigrants that were maybe picking fruit trees or vegetables out of fields or something like that. No, I'm talking about the people that built America, the Europeans that came over here and literally, and every one of them worked so hard under such ridiculous conditions that their next generation, so that their kids could actually have a house and, or go to school, get a degree, become a doctor, lawyer, or whatever. But during that time, there was only 100 million people in the United States. And out of that 100 million people, most people still weren't, you were either living in cities, okay, huddled into certain cities, but there weren't that many big cities. New York always was always a big, giant, congested mess, right? Chicago, things like that. The West was still fairly not really that overly developed, if you think about it. But, most of America, people at that time in the early part of the 20th century, they were still using outhouses. Think about that. 2,000 years after the Roman Empire collapsed, where they actually had running water, aqueducts, and toilets, right? People in the U.S. were using outhouses. Think about that. That's another concept people don't understand. When empires fall, all right? It goes back, to primitive. So there was 100-some million people. Sounds like a lot. It's not, okay? By the time we reached the 70s, the U.S. population got up to about 200 million people. So it had doubled. And by that point, and those were the glory years of America. That was the United States of America, That's when you had that was the middle class. And it was post World War II, people started to have, the suburbs and in the cities, the people had the car, the house, and yes, a refrigerator, right? And then a washer and dryer and a little lawn and things like that, and a car. And those were good times. All right. And this is post the civil rights movement. In other words, we moved beyond the civil rights movement. The feminist movement was also a success. The civil rights movement was a success. By the late 70s, the number one music was classic R&B music. We had way beyond civil rights movement. And, Norman Mailer was doing TV shows. All right. The idea was America was America. It was golden. It was a golden time. The 60s and the 70s was a golden time. It was tumultuous years. We fought through it. But the lifestyle, when we came out the other end, we came out on top. And America was that beacon on the hill, right? We had gotten rid of, prior to that, we destroyed, Nazism, fascism, and communism. By the late 80s, we got rid of that. Destroyed the Soviet Union. It was all gone. Now, fast forward to current times, and now you have some 330 to 350 million people in the United States. Okay? 3 times the amount you had in the early part of the 20th century, the beginning of the 20th century, and more than 6 times, maybe 7 times the amount of people that are around during like the Civil War. Okay? All right? So we're only about, so people don't understand that. So you got people, hundreds of millions of people along the way, from 100 million, from 40 million, 40 or 50 million to 100 million, 200 million, now 300 plus million, heading towards probably 400. They just keep opening the gates, floodgates, and let everybody and their brother in, And remember, they say, oh, well, these people aren't going to be using picks and shovels, to rebuild our infrastructure. Or like John Kerry, they're going to become technicians on solar panels and windmills, to get back to the whole start of this. No, it takes heavy equipment and it manufacturing, to do that. And that heavy equipment and manufacturing plants require fossil fuels and lots of it. You want to clean up the infrastructure? You want to try to come up with green energy? Forget it, man. It would take you decades and decades and decades just to do it right. But we need to dismantle all of the not solar panels, all of the windmills. They need to be taken down and melted down to, liquefied and turned into, I don't know what, girders for to repair bridges. So we should do. Melt down the windmills and make steel girders and repair some thousands and thousands of bridges in the U.S. that are about ready to fall apart. But what I'm saying is the coastal cities, all these cities didn't have people. So when you go from 100 million people in the early part of the 20th century to 350 million in the beginning of the 21st century, you triple the population, and everyone wants to live by the beach, and everyone wants to live down south in Texas and New Orleans and along the Gulf Coast and Florida coast, Space Coast, South Carolina, North Carolina, right? Want that prime real estate, ocean view. Well, there's going to be a hurricane that have always happened. It's going to cause mass devastation and loss of life. But when it happened in, 1919 or 1884 or something, nobody even knew it happened. We didn't have Doppler radar. We didn't have like weather satellites. NOAA wasn't, didn't have any satellite view of some kind of thing. The people down there closed their storm shutters and, their houses were built on pylons and they just hoped for the best. The people out and living in Kansas went down into their storm shelters and hoped that when they emerged after the storm, their house was still there. Those few people that lived there. You didn't have major cities and university and college towns along Tornado Alley. You didn't have major megalopolises, in Florida, and all along the Gulf Coast. So, the people didn't even know there were hurricanes unless you lived nearby. You didn't even know. There always were these storms, man. It's part of its history. It's the way it is. It's the planet. And then later on years, like even going back to the 70s, when I was a kid, we had snow so high. I was just talking to my 87-year-old mother yesterday on the phone. And just briefly, we were mentioning something like this. And she goes, yeah, I remember we couldn't get out of the back door and the garage was completely covered with snow. Well, the height of an average garage. But that was like 50 years ago. So people just they don't get it 40 some years. And so if you're not 50 years old, 40 or 50 or 60, whatever years old, and you hear somebody like Kerry who knows better because he's probably 80 or something. He knows better. He should have seen this cycle repeat twice in his life. And they're out there and they're pushing his nonsense. And these reporters are saying, yeah, that nor'easter's caused because the ocean's warming up due to climate change. And it's causing all this snow in New York City. Whatever accent that's supposed to be. And I'm looking at him the same way, you look at that CNN announcer with the burning building behind him going, this is a peaceful rally while the city's burning on fire behind him. And people just look at this and they go, oh, okay, yeah, I guess the city isn't burning behind him. And I guess the ocean is warmed and yeah, we're doomed and if we don't like turn ourselves over to the globalists and the, great reset and give all our property up, you will own nothing and you will be happy. That's what the Great Reset's all about. the World Economic Forum, that the world's going to end in 9 years. You know, it's called 2030, Agenda 2030. That's why they use the word, that's why Kerry used the word 9 years. See, they want to have this completely implemented so the UN is in charge of the world by the year 2030. It's Agenda 2030. It used to be Agenda 21, and that meant 21st century. But that got like messed up because Hillary Clinton didn't win, and you know, and there were still some journalists left, and they hadn't killed those journalists off or got rid of them. You know, there used to be some decent journalists and investigative reporters. Now you just have news readers. You know, they don't know what's going on, or the young kids, so they don't know themselves. You know, they're not all nefarious. They're not all like up to no good. They just don't know better. They went to school, you know. It's like, you know, and they were just taught this. It's like the academics, the professors that are teaching a lot of this communist craziness, they don't know any better. Because, you know, if you have a professor and say the dude's 40 years old, okay? Well, it's the year 2021. So 40 years ago, just, you know, subtract it, was like 1980, right? Well, by 1980, they had already started that, you know, revisionist history. You know, that's when like Wall Street was taking over. You know, that was that whole thing. They got rid of the S&Ls, the savings and loans, so that the big banking systems, you know, the globalism was beginning. You know, the corporatocracy was taking root, you know. So these people don't even know. And besides, at that age, you know, like I say, if a professor's 45 years old, 40 years ago, he was 5 years old. How does he remember, you know, these things that happened 40, 50 years ago? He was either an infant or he wasn't born. But if you're over 50, you know, if you're 60 or 70 or 80, like my 87-year-old mother, well, hell, you remember all that stuff. You know, you've watched multiple cycles occur, and that's what we're seeing. That's what the weather and the climate is on the earth. And it's the same with these so-called plagues, these diseases. They're making this out as if the past year and a half, we've been treated as if you go outside of your house, you run the risk of getting a flesh-eating disease and dying. But 99% plus people haven't died and won't die from it. And we've had these things, these cyclical things. You know, back in 1957, remember when there was the population was 1/3 less, all right? Over some 100 million or 100,000 people died of a flu, right? And it was never even like really like people don't even know about that one, because nobody was like doing anything about it. They just went about their lives. On any given year, there's always 20 to 60,000 people dying from flu and complications of that. And as the population doubles, then you would expect that it would be more. So if the population was 80 million people in 1957 or whatever it might have been, 160 million people in 1987 or in 1957, and 100,000 people died of a flu. Well, when the population doubles to 320 million plus, you would expect a couple 100,000 people to die or more to die, because it's probably up to 330, 350 million people. You would expect the same numbers of people, according to probability and statistics, just statistically, all right, to die from, that kind of cyclical flu that would happen every, 60 years or so or whatever, And, if you think about it, the other flu was in the 20s, the 1917, 1918, right? So going to 60, roughly to 57 to 60, 17 to 57, 50 years, flash forward. So literally, you're looking at like a 50, 60 year cycle of like these kind of, big flu events. And then in between every like decade or decade and a half, you have these, flus that just kill maybe, half that. And nobody even and again, because people are so young and because they're like glued to television, they don't think logically. They don't understand statistics. Like, remember, I always say figures lie and liars figure. And they use numbers or percentages in depending on which one they feel that they, can mess with somebody's mind the most. All right. As I say.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
And so how can they scare you? So if they say, 300,000 people are dying, from this thing, people go, my God, 300,000 people. Yeah, well, 300,000 people out of 300 plus million people. Remember, 3 million would be 1%. 300,000 is 0.1%. That means 99.9% of the people in the United States of America, formerly united, this country's not united anymore. It doesn't exist. It's the states, like they say in Europe and elsewhere. All this place is a bunch of states, geographical locations. United, gone. Constitution, gone. Western civilization was nice while we had it, but it's buried. Constitution's been trampled on. So they won't say, well, this thing has only really affected 0.1% of the population, or that 99.9% of the people haven't died from it. Right? I'm not going to say that, because then you're going to think, you mean you're putting me through all this nonsense on something that I have, that I most likely have a 99.9% chance of not getting, right? Not dying from? 99.9%. Think about it. That's fact. That's not like, I'm not making that up. That's the reality. That's the number. But instead they put up 300,000. And now you think, wow, that's a lot of people. Yeah, it is a lot of people. But in a country of 330,000 people, or 350,000, but at least 330, that's the number that's like widely pushed around right now. I think it's somewhat loosely based on recent census calculations. So it's actually less than 0.1%. So it's 99. Yeah, but it's fairly accurate scientifically to say 99.9% of the people in the United States of America did not die of this thing, right? But again, they've got people thinking, oh my God, there's a flesh-eating disease. If I, go there, close your business, wear this, stay away from people. Don't do this, don't do that. We'll have to keep this up for another couple of years. Sitting in his chair for an hour and a half. I wasn't even going to do a show today. So, that's reality. So the idea is that when they're putting this in front of you, this dystopia, especially that center picture with the woman, and the panic, right? All the sourpusses out there and all the naysayers and stuff. Just remember, that we live in a beautiful world, okay? And that you can find, there's all these things, they can't take these away from you. And that really bothers them. It bothers them big time. It bothers them. A beautiful sunset. It bothers them. Of course, they own all that oceanfront property, They've taken that away from us. So the average person doesn't get the chance to see the beautiful sunset, unless they go in debt. Going on vacation cost you like, you charge your credit cards and they charge you a ridiculous percentage interest to go if you want to have, walk on a beach. And all these games they play in while isolating people. So forget about, the beauty of experience, like in my case, the beauty of experiencing the sensual nature of being a human, right? Because, oh no, we can't. We got a social distance, you know? And God forbid you know, go to a bar. You can't go to a bar, but God forbid you say to a girl, hey, you know, how you doing? You know, you look, you know, you look nice, or, you know, whatever. You compliment them. That's like, almost, you know, it's like, oh, it's an assault. And closing the restaurants. So forget about the food. Music, yeah, copyright strike a guy like me who has a music mind. You know, I've been in music business my whole life almost. I could put on a music show that would just blow your mind. You'd be like, "Oh man, I haven't heard that song in a long time," or "Wow, I never heard that. That's good. What's that? Where's that from?" No, copyright strike, video banned, you know, blocked. Art and philosophy, they don't even teach it unless you go to college and like major in something like that. You know, where's art? Pop culture is, you know, pop culture has become, like I say, is politics. That's all you see on the news and everywhere. It's like politics. It's like pop culture. It shouldn't be pop culture. The things that we should be seeing on the new or should be pop culture should be things like art. You know, what's the latest pop art, music, you know, ideas, things, what's the latest trends, fashion, where's the mini skirt, you know, what are people wearing, the Nehru shirt, you know, weird sport jacket, you know, they got rid of that. Beer, drinking, oh, it's a crime, can't go to a bar. They're afraid people get together and then, you know, they might meet a guy like me in a bar who just says this kind of stuff, you know. And people go, you know, it makes sense what he's saying. You know, it's interesting. I didn't think of that. So, you know, you could get through this whole dystopian nightmare. And that's what I'm saying. So it's, they can't control you. You know, they don't really control our free speech. They're trying their damnedest. Yeah, they can block your video if you play an Aerosmith song, which I don't even like. Steven Tyler's kind of turned me off, you know, in his later years. But anyway, you know, I'll still listen. You know, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But no, you've got to basically laugh at their megalomania. Okay, just laugh at it. That really, really pisses them off. You know? You have to just do the things that you can do. You can enjoy nature. Yeah, you can enjoy a sunrise or a sunset. You could plant flowers and grow food in your backyard. Hell, you could grow it on your porch. People grow it. When I was in Florida, I grew tomatoes inside my apartment in the window. And I had such a harvest that it was out of freaking control. I'm serious. It was ridiculous. It got insane. You know, you can learn to cook if you can't cook. You could do all this kind of stuff. You can listen to music, even if you can't share it. Unfortunately, you can't share it, apparently. Otherwise, it's a copyright strike. You could pursue happiness. Just because everybody around you has a sourpuss on, you know, party poopers, no fun allowed, doesn't mean that you have to be that way. You know, have fun. You could compliment a woman if you want to. You know, I would say most real women would like that. They obviously went out and bought that particular piece of clothes. They obviously did something to themselves when they went out to look nice, right? People like to be told, you know, like to be acknowledged, put it that way. They don't necessarily need to be complimented. You know, maybe that's fading from, you know, from our culture. I hope not. But even if it is, it's still, what's not fading is the fact is you want to be acknowledged at least. You know, hi, how you doing? I can't think of how many times, you know, because I walk down the street to the store and up the street to another place. early in the morning, there's people out walking, some people walking a dog, or some people just walking for exercise, I guess, or whatever. And I'll tell you, it's almost 50-50. I'll say good morning or how you doing, and I'll see people cross the road, or they just like straight ahead, look straight ahead or look away. It's all you think in your mind, well, what's your problem, man? I'm just saying, how you doing? Good morning, what's up, But that's how they're brainwashing people, they got, and you just don't allow it to happen. And so enjoy nature, and if you can't, and I don't know, have fun. I hope these visuals, on the morning show.
Good morning.
It's only 8:18 here in the mid-Atlantic states in the U.S. of A., the former United States of America, now just the states. At a time when we used to have something called Western civilization. And I'll tell you, all I know is one thing. Beam me up, man. Yeah, Scotty, beam me up, please. All right, folks. I think I gave you an earful today, so it was fun, though. I can't believe how cold it is outside, though. Glad yesterday I went and got my toilet paper. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. And today's Sunday. For some, that's the beginning of the week. And for others, Monday's the beginning of the week. Just don't listen to these people. Be free. Like I said, live and let live. I don't step on anybody else's toes. I don't interfere with anybody else's life. And I don't want people interfering with my life. That's basically the way I live my life. Live and let live. There's me book, Codex. I've got songs available on the old internet. And I will add the link to my website. Well, you can go to rockflux.com. So you see Rockflux if you look in the chat thing, or the name of this channel is Rockflux. You can go to rockflux.com, and then way down the bottom there's a link to my other website, which is going to end up being my main website. I'm like doing a major reshuffling right now. That's why I got the Tony Caravan Live thing. I'll probably play with that one today. So yeah, just have a good day. If Sunday's your day off, great. If you're like me, I don't even know what I'm going to do today. I just hope I could solve this problem why I'm set up, with YouTube Premium, but I'm seeing commercials. Because, man, do I hate commercials. Can't stand them. Anyway, I'm going to go now. Cheers. Have a great day. Peace and all that stuff. See you next time.